Alrighty, folks, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and try and see how quickly can we go ahead and take this piece of terrain and get it ready to toss on a map, either for your wargaming or for your tabletop RPG friends. So this is a little 40k piece. I got this in a Thousand Suns kill team, and we're going to see what we're able to do with this. You know, terrain is a really fun way to step up your game as far as what you've got on the table or anything like that, and it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be something intimidating. In fact, I really like attacking a couple of pieces of terrain to give myself something new and a break for minis. And I think we can do this a little bit like a speed paint. So let's see how quickly we can get this one done. I got a pretty decent sized brush going on here, and you're going to see that I'm not being super careful. And that's because ultimately we are going to be taking a lot of dust to this. It's going to look like it's really covered in dust and debris and all kinds of things. And I'm talking about dust, I'm not talking about flocking here. We're going to do that with some of your dry brushing technique that I am sure you're very good on. We talk about it a lot. It's a pretty quick technique to pick up. So right now I'm using Skeleton Horde from the new contrast line. I really like it. It's great for bone, unsurprisingly, but I really like it as a type of stone look. I think it gives us something nice and neat to look at. And since this whole statue is carved out of stone, that's the decision I'm making. That's the story we're telling by using this color scheme here. It all works. Terrain maybe can be a way for you to experiment with doing monochrome paints, something that's a little more popular when you've got painting for a display piece or like a bust. Oh, sorry, let me get back in that shot for you. I'm really getting this all over the place. It's kind of how the contour paint works. If you're new to contour paints, after this you can go check out our review of contour paints. Get a link for that for you. I've gotten a little bit better at them. They are a new tool in the toolbox to use. But the terrain, you don't need to be super careful. And it's not the idea of, you're not being sloppy. It's just that this same color is doing a lot of heavy lifting, covering a lot of your surfaces. Yeah, I like to do a speed paint every once in a while. I think it's a fun way to sort of test your skill, your technique, under a little bit of a time crunch. It's a fun thing to do. Yeah, I really like how this is turning out already. Something that's neat with this terrain, you'll see it a lot with the Warhammer terrain. These statues look like they've got electrical lines and pipes and servos and all kinds of stuff inside of them. Really want this paint to do its job and get down in all of those cracks and crevices. Alright, so there's sort of our first major color that we're using. I'm going pretty quick. What you don't see me doing off to the side here is I've got my little towel to clean my brush off, and I got some water off to the side. Or if you're a brush licker, I do it sometimes. No shame in that whatsoever. If you're a brush licker, what do you think about the taste of the contrast paints? Do they taste different? No, that's ridiculous. That's silly. What am I talking about? Alright, so now we're going to come in here. We're going to get a little bit of this Basilicanum Grey. I like that. That's what's going to go on this weapon thing that he's got. Now you can see I'm picking up my other color there, and contrast paints don't like to layer a lot. So if this was a tabletop piece for you, I would probably suggest avoiding those layers, and you would instead, I would tell you, really try to make sure you paint only what's going to be that color, leave the rest of it white. For us, it's not going to matter. This dry brushing technique we do at the end is going to cover up a lot of our mistakes. It's going to hide a lot of those things for us. I'm just deciding right now that I want to get these wires and these cables in this gray. We're going to build up a lot of layers, so a lot of this stuff is going to be not completely gone, but it will sneak back into the background a little bit more. Neck up there. Let's move on to this ground. I've decided I want this to be a nice muddy battleground that we're on. Moving in layers and sections here. I don't have to be super careful, but I do want to pay a little bit of attention. Just to make sure my, like my thumb isn't resting on a bunch of stuff and pulling the paint out. Really trying to pull out these different colors here, the contrast between all of them. You don't have to do this with contrast paint. If you don't like the way contrasts work for you, or you don't feel like learning a new paint, you just don't feel like spending the money on them, use your inks and layers and bases. Probably really want to make sure you're thinning them down. That's a big part of what I'm doing here is I got some nice movement of this paint. Terrain can really be a quick process here. We're treating this as a speed paint, but even if we weren't, this moves pretty quickly. Picking up where the contrast likes to bead and pull away a little bit. Now it's already primed, of course. Hey, so look at that. That's what we've got here. That's what we got there. Now I'm trying to be careful. I'm just trying to pull any of that wet paint off of my underside there. So here's what I've got. Already, we've got a pretty dynamic looking piece. So now let's pick up a couple of places, a couple of areas to really let those pop. I'm doing all of this one, just about all of this one, these initial colors in contrast. Because I wanted to give that a shot, see how that looks. Not something that you absolutely have to do. I like this little gear, and I like the shaft of this halberd. Halberd? Halberd. Halberd. I said it wrong in another video, and now I can't remember how it's said. Halberd. Halberd. Is it a bird named Hal? I'm sure you'll tell me. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments below. I'm sure I'll get an actually in there. Yeah, there we go. Like that. So we're already in a pretty good spot. Now, as far as the non-contrast paints we're going to use, I'm picking up and moving it a lot less now because I've got a lot of wet paint on there. I really do. Now, let's bring in some metallics. I'm using a nice silver metallic paint here in order to pick up this weapon. And it's still a little wet. It's not going to be the most dynamic, most different looking afterwards, but it's going to give it a little shine. I want that shine to come through our weathering or dusting that we do later. And I've got a little bit brighter of a silver, and I'm going to use on just a few of these other pieces of pipe. Just picking things out. Just a little bit more interesting. This is kind of arbitrary. It's where do I feel like I want these? Something that can be fun about your terrain. A little bit more freedom there. I'm even going to bring in some brass. Maybe this idea that we've got some copper pipes. In through here. Some good copper piping. Maybe it was a fountain. Maybe it's a fountain that collapsed. Go. I like that. Alright, so for where we are, we don't have a ton left to do. I got some technicals that I'm going to pull in here now. Got some Typhus Corruption. It's going to give me some nice texture. And now this I'm only keeping on the metal, where I think this metal has rusted. So now we're going to tell the story. Okay, well, most of that is stone, but there's some metal accent pieces that they did. Some of this corroded piping is going on there. You can already see now I'm covering up some of the work that I did. You're right. You're right. This thing is a ruin. It's been destroyed. It's not going to be perfect and pretty. This copper piping makes me want to get a little bit of this oxidization. Said that word a little weird. Oxidization going on. Yeah. And where does moisture collect? Got a little heavy on this spot, so what I'm doing here is I cleaned my brush off a little bit. Now that it's drier, bringing it back in to try to kind of pick that up. All right. So this is a pretty dynamic, fun-looking little piece. You know, you could probably call this done here if you wanted to. Let all of this dry and everything. You know, a speed paint video like this, I'd love to do it with absolutely no cuts, but I do need to let things dry a little bit. Once this is dry, that's when we're going to look at our dry brush technique. And you're going to see how drying out changes those colors. So we're going to give this just a couple minutes. Hey folks, we're back. So I've really let this get nice and bone dry. These are two examples of other bits of terrain that I've done all of this same technique with. You know, here you can see where we've got those splashes of color of silver and bronze, you know, yellow bits, the bone bits, and then we've layered over the top of it all of this dry brushing that we're going to do. Here's another one. You get a little bit of this color that shines through. It's this idea of time and weather and dinge and dust that all accumulates. That's what we're going to do with this littler statue right here, but I wanted you to see a couple of differences. This one's a lot more gray, and that just comes down to the types of base or layer that you use when you're doing your dry brush. This one's a little warmer color, a little bit more brown. The idea of, you know, maybe this is all concrete dust and gravel that's accumulated, and this one we've got more dirt and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a couple of other pieces. I've got my dry brush again. That's just a cheap makeup brush. You've seen this if you watch your other painting tutorials. You see this brush pop up a lot. I love this little guy. I actually was doing some dry brushing while this was drying on something completely different, so I got dry brush thumb going on right there. So I think for this one, we're gonna go a little more of an accumulation of dirt. So that's what we're going to start with there. I'm going to start with a nice light brown tan type color. Sand that's kicked up. And I've gone through, and this is, when I talk about dry brush thumb, this is what I'm talking about. I do this here. I dab it off on my towel in my lap. And I'm just coming in. There we go. And just brushing this over, layering this on top of everything. Same way that you would do a dry brush for anything else. And, you know, yeah, we're going to lose some detail here in these colors. Oh, that's a little heavy. That's a little heavy. That's all right. I'm going over nice and quick. And, you know, I'm pushing into this a little bit more than maybe I normally would. That's because normally I don't want to lose a lot of those colors. But in this one, I want to have this idea that this dust has really settled in over time. So for this first dust layer, this first bit of dry brushing, giving it a good push as I come in, get that color everywhere. And you know, it knocks down a lot of that. It knocks down a lot of our colors. It dulls them out, it covers them up, but they still shine through a little bit. Those metals, those yellows and silvers and greens. I'm squeezing down in there because, you know, this crack, well, yeah, definitely want to have some dirt down in there. Really knocks those colors down, mutes them down. And there we have that first layer of dust. You know, a quick dab of water, get that layering brush clean again. Coming in with some darker brown. And this one I'm being a little more careful with. This one I'm not pressing quite as hard. You know what? I'm not a big fan of that. We're going to call an audible here. I'm going to switch this over. I got this nice gray, this Stormvermin Fu. Decide I'm going to do that instead. I think I like how that's going to look. Yeah, I like that better. Now this one I am just pulling down on. I'm not jamming it into the cracks and crevices quite as much. It is more of a, maybe what we kind of think of as a dry brushing. I'm pulling this down, like, you know, like the dust is sort of settling in. You could make this directional. You could have all of this dust off to this one side, and maybe this side is a little cleaner, you know, and then if you got a bunch of those pieces that are all like that and you set them facing the same way, it's like, oh, there's a dust storm that comes through. Get some storytelling going on there. Getting it just nice down into that crack, that crevice right there. That's a nice little thing. You might be thinking, Ryan, isn't there a bunch of flocking out there? You use lots of flocking in other bits. Is there another way of doing this? And yeah, there is. There's really fine flocking, or you can do the baking powder method. I've talked about that in the past. You can. That's a great way of doing it. I just wanted to give you one more way of seeing how we can quickly and easily make some terrain to throw on your table. And there we've got them. Now we've got pretty cool little ruined city scape going on there with our bits. There's the one that we did just today, and two others that I've done in this exact same way. Alrighty, so happy painting. Give this a try. Tell me what you think of it. What are some of the ways that you like to be able to do some quick and easy Terrain, is there another style that you like? What do you think of monochrome painting? This is getting kind of in that field. We only used kind of three colors, and then this shading, this idea of this dust. Maybe you prefer to doing it with flocking. That's fine too, but this is just one more way for you to try out. So I hope you do give it a shot, and if you do, let me know what you think in the comments below.
A big thanks to all of our patrons, especially to Sean. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron.
I hope you loved this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Tag a friend who's got some terrain laying around unpainted. Could probably knock it out in an afternoon, have a bunch of new fun stuff. We make videos every Tuesday and Thursday, so I hope you join us then, and hit the subscription button and the notification button, because sometimes we do some fun unplanned things. Follow us on all of the socials, and until next time, I'm Ryan, and this is Roll for Initiative. Thanks, bye.